I hadn't experienced this last weekend, but it happens to me regularly. My boys are both 5-sport athletes, so I'm standing at the sidelines, and I'm always surrounded by enormous muscly men. And I'm always the only one carrying code, I read the code. And so I've got these big guys, and there's a guy next to me, and he looks at me, he's friendly, I'm approachable, I think, and he says, so which one's yours? And so, I point out mine, I say, he's the one that looks like he can eat yours. And he looks at me, and he looks at Caleb, and he's never sure what to say. And so he says something like, does he get his size from your wife? And I make sure she's not around, and I go, yes. Yes, she does. He does. So what I don't tell him is what I'm going to tell you. So kind of my own family experience. So when we got married and we weren't having children, and we took the in vitro route, and it didn't work. So we started investigating adoption. And it kind of sat well with us anyway. We felt like adoption was a good approach. And we both are people who read a lot, so we read about what's involved in adoption. And we both work with adolescents, and we really like people who are the age of most of you. I guess the age of everybody, but you guys especially. And one of the things that bothered us about adoption is, especially when you get to be an adolescent and that sort of difficult time of life, especially people who've been adopted have more trouble with feelings of rejection or abandonment. Clearly not everybody, but it's an issue. And with open adoption, the adopted child maintains a relationship with the biological family, and that really appealed to us. So part of the process there, we go through an amazing array of background checks and interviews, but we create this profile. And what would happen is we get a call from the adoption agency and say, there's this birth mother who kind of fits what you're looking for, and should we give her your profile book? And it's an amazingly emotional experience, because this is like a job interview for the rest of your life. And I remember we got a call, this birth mother she was incarcerated for the next 6 to 8 years. And so we declined, because that wasn't really the level of openness we were looking for. And I remember another call we got that we had actually said yes to. We were leaving on a trip to Disney. We got a call saying that we had been rejected. And how could they reject us? We're really nice. And so we got this call, and it sounded like what we were looking for. And, she was local, so we'd be able to maintain a relationship with her family. She was 16, gonna have the baby pretty soon. And so we said, yeah, give her our profile book. And they called us back a few days later and said, there's kind of a catch with this one. She is being followed by a television crew that's going to chronicle this whole process so that people can learn about open adoption. And we talked to her. They said, if you want to stay as a candidate here, you have to agree to be filmed for this whole extremely personal, emotional process. Now, Tina and I are both kind of private. She probably hasn't said anything to any of you. She's sitting right up there. And so we talked about it, but we said, well, we're one of several candidate families anyway. Do we want, yeah, we'll go ahead and do this. So we stayed in the mix. So it turned out, are you doing it? Oh, yeah, good. That's all good. So it turned out, so Barbara Walters was then the host of 2020, and she had adopted her own daughter. So each year she would do a special about adoption, and she had just happened to choose to do one about open adoption and selected this same girl who we had said yes regarding our profile book. And so we ended up driving to the agency where, I'm a little bit off. We ended up driving to the agency, and we're all mic'd up, and there are lights and cameramen and producers, and it's extremely hot. And we had kind of thought, we're going to be interacting with an adolescent. We both like adolescents, we'll be talking. But it was a very artificial environment where the agent just asked questions, and we would answer these questions, and we get no response whatsoever. And they'd all look at us, and we go on to the next question. It was horribly uncomfortable. We walked out, you read people, and we had no idea how we'd done. So we went home, and we get a call that, this is really the only part that differed from if it hadn't been televised. They wanted to film people getting told yes or no, as opposed to just getting a call at home. Wonderful, this is something you want to share with the nation. So we go back the next day to find out, well, everything involving television crews gets delayed. So we were each supposed to arrive a half hour apart, but they were running like an hour and a half late. So we find ourselves with 4 adjacent families parked next to each other. And I roll down the window, and there's a couple next to us. It's a police officer and his wife, and they're so cool and funny and friendly, and we're talking about, how clean does your bathroom have to be if Barbara Walters is going to sit on your toilet seat, And, it was kind of like, hey, we're in this together. So then it's fun to talk to them. I roll down the window on the other side to talk to the other family, and they're like, all right, a little more competitive on that side. So then they start bringing in the other couples, and the first couple comes out and they're crying. And then the next couple comes out and they're crying. So we go in, and they say, she didn't select you, but she didn't reject you. You have to come back and get interviewed again. Okay. So we come back for another interview, and this time, Jessica, the 16-year-old, she asked the questions. And she's asking us questions, and these are incredibly personal and kind of private questions. And I'm thinking, what sort of asinine thing am I going to say on national television that they're going to put into the show? And we're not getting a response. And finally I said, look, I need to hear from you. Are you kind of on the same page for what our expectations are for openness? And she said, yeah, we're looking at, she felt the same way that we did. So she ended up selecting us. So 2 days later, she has a baby. And the next day, we're invited up to the hospital to meet this baby and see Jessica. So we go up to the hospital, and we're intercepted by the adoption agent. She says there's kind of a complication. The birth father's back, and he doesn't want her to go through with this adoption. So we go into the room, and he's there, and he asks us some questions about religion and our feelings about different things. And he says to my wife, well, I know that you're very pro-education because you were my teacher. And she looks at him, are you serious? He was like a squirrely little freshman when she had him, and now he's like a man-looking person. So, what are the social norms, the conversation you have there with the student? So we leave, and we're supposed to go back. 72 hours have to pass before she can sign adoption papers. So we come back after the amount of time has passed, and the adoption agent intercepts us and says, there's a complication. She's kind of wavering. She might have changed her mind. So you just need to go into this other room and wait. So we go into this other room where, you'd like to be alone with your wife, and there's a cameraman right there the entire time. And I've got this stupid mic on, and it's poking me in the back, and we wait for 2 hours. And you're just sitting there in this enormous clock on the wall, and I can just hear it tick, 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 tick. So after a couple hours, the agent comes in and says, Jessica needs to talk to you. So we go into the room where Jessica is with the baby, and her whole family is standing there around, and Jessica says, it's not the right decision for me, but the right decision for this baby is to pass him to you. So she hands this baby over to Tina. Everybody in the room is crying. They all hug us. And at that moment, our family got redefined, because all those people in that picture ended up becoming a part of our family. And we've been to their graduation parties and their weddings and a funeral. And we just didn't realize that one would change our family so much. And they would come to our house to visit. Jessica was 16, well, turned 17. And we would set up, okay, she's coming this Saturday, and we're all gonna get together and do something. And then she would get in trouble and get grounded and wouldn't come. And it had been a long time since our social plans had been impacted by the people who were getting together with being grounded, kind of in back times. So, so one of the aspects of having a very public adoption is anyone who had questions about adoption would come and ask us, and just regularly. So we got this call, a friend of a friend had this woman who was living with them who had a baby. And they said, could Tina come and talk to her? So what had happened was when she'd gotten pregnant, the guy wasn't involved anymore, and she didn't want a parent. But her own mom convinced her that, she said, hey, we'll raise this baby together. And so she carried the baby full term and delivered this healthy baby. And 2 weeks after the baby was born, her mom died of a heart attack unexpectedly. So she found herself homeless with this baby she wasn't planning to parent. And so Tina went to talk to her and explain to her what some of her options were with open adoption. You know, that she didn't have to just sever her ties with this baby. So we sent her to the agency that we were working through, and she looked at some profile books and she selected us. So we ended up with this baby Caleb who has turned into the giant. But the other amazing thing about Lisa is she has since become one of Tina's closest friends. You know, she babysits the kids, she babysits our dogs. When we can't make it to family gatherings, she goes even though we can't go. You know, she lost her parents, and she, I just lost where I was going. So in any case, we got Caleb, but another redefinition of our family, I know what it was. Tina has 2 sisters, so they're 3, and my mother-in-law, who I really like, by the way, says, refers to Lisa as her fourth daughter. So she came into this family as a part of that. So, and the amazing thing about these 2 women is when they come to our house, there's no way of knowing which one came from which one. At least they sense, but you know, they bring gifts for both of them. They're friends with each other. You know, we redefined this entire family unit. So yeah, here they are watching a rugby game with Tina and Caleb. So several years pass, and my older son has had a series of increasingly bad headaches, and I take him to the hospital. They life flight him up to Metro. He's had apparently a cyst in his skull has ruptured, and he's having a cerebral hemorrhage. And they're going to take him in for surgery first thing in the morning, cut open his skull. And they're asking all these terrifying questions. You know, does your family have any history of rejecting anesthesia? And we call Jessica right away. You know, what can you tell us? And she gets us all the information that we need, but we need the information from the birth father's side as well. She says, I'll get that. And she calls us back with that information as well before Ryan goes in for the surgery. So we have all the information for the doctors. And she says, so I got in touch with Chris, that's the birth father, but he has a request. He'd like to meet Ryan. So Ryan goes in for the surgery, comes out, 22 staples holding his skull shut, 2 coming out of his head. He's in recovery, you know, next day, and he gets to meet his birth father for the first time. So Ryan's this 5-sport athlete. He's hoping Tom Brady's going to walk in. And in comes this guy who, you know, looks like a normal guy. And Ryan's there, and he looks at this guy, and he says, why am I meeting you for the first time now? It took something like this. And Hollywood could not have scripted a more gracious character than Chris. Chris said, I apologize. I'd like to be a part of your life if you and your family will have me now. You can ask me anything. And Ryan says, what sports did you play? Were you an athlete? And he says, I wasn't. I wish that I had. Maybe I would have made some better decisions with my life. Oh, there's a nice picture. So he and Jessica, after that, ended up getting back together. And so Ryan now has a full biological sibling who we get together with periodically. So our family gets redefined again. We went to watch him play t-ball this last summer. T-ball's horrible. But so they're at the hospital, you know, everybody wants to come in and see him, but we're in pediatric intensive care for 9 days with kind of strict admission standards. And Lisa, who is Caleb's birth mom, wanted to come in and see him. And she lied because she didn't think she could say, oh, I'm his adopted brother's birth mom, can I come in? So she lied and said that she was his birth mom. So they let her in. Well, Jessica, who is his birth mom, didn't think they would let her in. So she came and lied and said she was Tina's sister. So they let her in. Well, Tina's sister came and didn't think they would let her in. So she lied and said she was Tina. So she gets through the doors and immediately breaks down and says, I'm so sorry, I panicked, I'm not Tina, I'm her sister. And the nurse goes, honey, Tina's been here the whole time, we knew you weren't her. But the gist of this story is, it's just there are all these people in his life who love him, and their relationship with him is really irrelevant. They're just a part of who his family is. So, the adoption agent that we dealt with said that there are really two professions that do more adoptions than any others, that they're teachers and nurses. And it's because those are two professions where you learn that you can care about and love somebody who you're really not related to in any way. So where are we now? I've got these two sweet, big, athletic boys, because they're not biologically related to me. And it's really my hope for you is that you are able to define a family for yourself that is as loving and supportive as the family that I have around me. So thank you very much.